Hello, my name is Leslie Rivera. I am currently enrolled in American Government Political Science 2, and in this video, I will be presenting part 1, while my partner Nicole will be presenting part 2 later on within the video. We will both be providing our understanding and information on the topic freedom of speech and press. For starters, to understand the topic freedom of speech and press, one must understand that it does deal with the First Amendment, which basically guarantees both religious freedom and the right to express one's view in public. Or, in other words, the First Amendment protects an individual's freedom to the right to freely express political and social beliefs. But to get a better understanding, there is a small video I would like to share on freedom of speech and explained.
The First Amendment gives Americans five basic freedoms: freedom of speech, press, petition, assembly, and religion. While all five are important, perhaps freedom of speech is talked about the most. Free speech is the cornerstone of our democracy. Although what you say can have consequences, like losing friends or a job, it gives Americans the right to express opinions without government censorship or control. And more importantly, you can't go to jail for expressing your opinion. It not only protects the speech that people like, but speech that people don't. Because when it comes to free speech, either everyone is protected or no one is at all. It allows citizens to support political movements and candidates. It gives people the power to call out government corruption and abuse. And most importantly, it empowers people to give unpopular opinions. The civil rights movement is a perfect example of free speech in action. During the 1950s and 60s, civil rights activists such as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. were able to use free speech as a tool to force change within society. By exercising their voice, civil rights activists were able to outlaw racial discrimination that plagued the nation. But in today's politically charged climate, some people believe the government should restrict certain speech. But thankfully, because of the First Amendment, everything from car commercials to fiery protests are protected.
Now that that's over with, I would like to move on to some more information about freedom of speech and press, such as the Near versus Minnesota 1931, that basically held the Supreme Court define freedom of the press. But my partner Nicole will go more into different cases and information on the topic freedom of speech and press.
And expanded limitations on speech. The passage later came to be viewed as an example of government overstepping First Amendment freedoms. President Woodrow Wilson pushed the passage of the Sedition Act during U.S. involvement in World War I. Wilson was concerned about morale and wanted to tackle disapproval of the war as well as the military draft. Under the act, the targets of the Sedition Act were pacifists, anarchists, and socialists who were seen as against the war effort. Violations could lead to as much as 30 years in prison, as well as a fine of $10,000. More than 2,000 cases were filed by the government, and more than 1,000 ended in convictions. The Sedition Act of 1918 was repealed in 1920, although many parts of the original Espionage Act remained in force. Moving forward, in Executive Order 13798 promoting free speech and religious liberty on March 21, 2019, President Trump assigned an executive order stating in part that the policy of the federal government is to encourage institutions that promote open, intellectual, engaging, and diverse debate, including through compliance with the First Amendment for public institutions and compliance with stated institutional policies regarding freedom of speech for private institutions. This executive order mandates that universities comply with the First Amendment and other applicable regulations and allow students to speak freely freely or face losing federal research grants. Today, although politics are tumultuous, the First Amendment grants all of us the right to express ideals and information. Basically, this means that we all have the ability to express our opinions, no matter how unpopular they may be, without fear of government censorship, as long as we follow propriety and treat each other with respect. So, all right, thanks for watching.
Here is another video to help one understand more information on freedom of speech and press dealing with the First Amendment.
The First Amendment protects freedoms of speech, press, religion, assembly, and petition. This sounds straightforward, but the First Amendment is still the subject of continuing interpretation and dispute. So let's look at the freedom of speech, which gives Americans the right to express themselves without fear of government interference. There are a number of categories of unprotected speech, including obscenity, true threats, incitement to imminent lawless action, and defamation. But deciding what speech falls within these categories is difficult. In reaching these determinations, courts often look at speech on a case-by-case basis and consider the context in which the speech was made. For instance, political speech, support or opposition of political figures, parties, and/or policies, enjoys stronger First Amendment protection. If speech is political in nature, no matter how outrageous and offensive it might be, it may still be protected by the First Amendment. So, yeah, this gets complicated. The First Amendment protects you from government punishment for what you say in most instances. However, the First Amendment is not unlimited. It protects you from government action, not the action of private organizations or people. Unless you're employed by the government, complaining about your boss could get you fired. Similarly, since social media websites are for the most part private entities, they're the only ones who can police posts on their respective sites. Similar to freedom of speech, freedom of the press allows people to express themselves through publication. This important freedom enables our journalists and reporters to freely report news and stories of public interest. But this also comes with some limitations. For instance, defamatory statements are not protected. Again, though, what constitutes defamation also requires a fact-intensive investigation. In addition, the First Amendment protects our right to peacefully assemble or gather together as a group for like-minded social, economic, political, or religious purposes. The First Amendment also protects our right to protest the government. We are free to sign petitions or even file a lawsuit against the government as well. And lastly, in guaranteeing the freedom of religion, the First Amendment prohibits the government from establishing a state religion or from favoring one religion over the other.
Thank you, Nicole, for that vital information regarding freedom of speech and press. Thank you for watching this video, whoever may come across it. And hopefully, some acknowledgement was gained after watching it. And hopefully, one may now understand the exact information regarding the topic freedom of speech and press. Once again, a overall understanding of freedom of speech and press is basically the right to express one's opinion freely and their beliefs, but also all the logistics that go behind the First Amendment of freedom of speech and press, and the individual cases that Nicole has mentioned in part 2, and the information that has helped lead one to withhold the right to freedom of speech and press. Thank you again for watching this video.